In my elementary classroom, I've learned that social studies is much more than just studying facts. It's about helping students understand how people and the places and events they all connect. The big ideas across history and geography and economics, they all work together to help students make sense of what's going on in the country or the world they live in. I've become confident with teaching more of the foundational concepts like timeline, citizenship. Um, these ideas helped my students understand why they're here and how they're here and what they can do here. Some more content that I feel more confident in would be immigration and geography, and that's because of my lessons this year. I studied a lot on both of those topics with my lessons, so I feel very confident in that. An area I just need to continue strengthening in general would be my history instruction. It's hard to, after being in the classroom, I've learned that it is really hard to incorporate social studies into like a content connection because I struggled with social studies as a kid and as a student, so I do understand how hard social studies can be to teach and for other students to learn. This semester helped me think about how to move beyond lectures and make social studies more active. During my immigration lesson, we used a artifact from the immigration time, and that really got my kids intrigued. I think if teachers did more movement activities during social studies, it would be, or like a scavenger hunt or escape room, I think it would be a lot more enjoyable for students, because I think that's why social studies is called boring, is because you're just sitting all the time. I used a children's book. It was Immigration Kids, and I used the artifact like I said. And then one of the biggest lessons for me was realizing that every child has different opinions on social studies. They have different experiences. I have a very different racial mix in my classroom, so immigration some kids knew more about than I would even really know about because they were Hispanic or something else. I differentiated in social studies because of that. I had a student who chose to say some different language during my lesson. It was really cool to watch. And then I did some sentence starters with them. I want my classroom to feel safe, and I learned to make a safe space for students' cultures and backgrounds and stories, because each of them have their own. Like I said, my classroom wasn't very different with race, but each of them all obviously have a different background. So there's differentiation that way, and I'm becoming more intentional about acknowledging students' identities and experiences in every lesson. I learned to carefully use and choose sources that are accurate and age appropriate and unbiased with my social studies lesson. I looked at when it was created or why they created it. Mostly I used both primary and secondary sources. I used photos, letters. Actually, I didn't use the letter, but I used photos, artifacts, and I used my children's book, like I said. And I want to deepen my comfort in evaluating the historical sources and making sure I avoid stereotypes or oversimplified narratives. I learned that social studies time is often limited, and it definitely was in my classroom. We had 20 minutes after lunch to do a piece of paper. So when I got to do my lesson, I obviously had a full 45. We switched writing and social studies so that I had 25 extra minutes, because that was hard to deal with. But we have 20 minutes for social studies every day, and they do a packet, and then we just go around the room sharing the answers. Pretty much we read it, go over it, and then we're done. So I think you could build stations, keep students active, like I said. You can check in with small groups with the stations. You can give them more maps and artifacts and vocabulary to explore while they move around to make it more memorable for them, because I remember being in a social studies class not remembering anything because it was just like how my classroom sort of was just reading from a paper and going on about your day. This semester showed me though that kids do love social studies when it feels real and hands-on. So like I said, if you bring an artifact, they definitely are more intrigued. Whenever possible, I think students should have a choice in how they respond to their social studies activity. They can draw, they can discuss, or act. My students love to act during my reading lesson, so I think that would have been really cool to incorporate during my social studies, and I will definitely remember that for whenever I'm a teacher. I think you can connect your lessons more. I could have connected my lessons, I guess, more to like their neighborhoods, their families, cultures and events that they have been through with their culture. I could have done a better job at that, but again, you get 45 minutes to incorporate all of the lesson plans, so it's harder. I encourage my students always, no matter the concept of what subject we're learning, to always ask questions and look at their information, critical think, because even in elementary school they can begin doing real historical thinking. At the end of the semester, I've realized the social studies teacher I want to be, and that will be a hands-on social studies teacher, make social studies interactive, make my students have fun with it. I will be teaching kindergarten from block 3 and 4, so I think it'll be harder, but at the same time, the concepts are a little bit more, I don't want to say fun because whatever, but like you're teaching them that they live in the United States. They're teaching them about Uncle Sam and the historical people like Abe Lincoln while they're on the panty. So I think I'll have a better way of teaching social studies now that I've gotten block 2 out of the way and actually had an experience of what my kids did during my lesson and how they responded to my mentor teacher every day. So